Hello and welcome to the EV Cafe Takeaway, a podcast focused on that zero emission future that we all hope for every week. I'm joined by one of the wonderful team from the EV Cafe. No less privileged this week because I've got the wonderful Sarah Sloman, the Sasminator, as we like to call her.
As you like to call me. I
like to call you.
I did wonder how you were going to introduce me this time, but thank you. Yes, I'm delighted to be here.
But every week, Saz, we get to talk to wonderful people from across our industry. And this one's a close one. You're not going to be able to ask all those usual naughty questions this time, because this time we have got the wonderful Keith Brown, MD of Paythru, which is the company, of course, that you work for. So this should be a really interesting conversation. Keith, welcome.
Thank you, Paul. Good morning. Good morning, Sarah.
Good morning. So, Keith, your LinkedIn profile is not something that you spend a lot of time on, I think, judging by the content thereof. But fortunately for me, there was a bit of information around you, and you've been at this game a little while, and you've had a few businesses, a few companies, even worked for Lloyd's of London. Fantastic. But tell me a little bit about your role now in Paythru and how you got here.
Okay. Yeah, Paythru has been going now about 15 years, and it grew. I think the phrase or the word is serendipity. It came about by accident, really, when we were trying to find a way to perpetuate the lifespan of my previous business, which was indirect marketing. So my biggest claim to fame is basically carpeting the Victoria line with leaflets and sticking 40-odd million pieces of post through people's letterbox in a mildly irritating way to sell financial services products. And when the world went digital, when it went online, around about the late 90s, people's buying behaviours changed. And I had the idea that people would ultimately transact both for their online business and every other day business through the mobile phone. So Paythru was actually formed as text trans, because in those days text was really the only method. We didn't really have online then in the late 90s. We didn't have data and so on. So we were trying to transact, and in fact, the first ad we did with text was with NSPCC. We were the first to do text to give off TV and stuff like that. But we realized we needed to make the solution more sophisticated. Paythru was born out of my previous business to do that. And 15 years later, here we are. In between, we've had businesses in Turkey, very successful business in South Africa, trying to really find that generation that would adopt mobile phone and commerce more rapidly than the UK did. UK is a plethora of wired devices, such as those we've been playing around with this morning, whereas younger demographic countries like Turkey and South Africa went straight to mobile, often using public Wi-Fi. So quite an interesting challenge. And then when we came back, unfortunately, some other people beat us to the punch. So whilst we were raising in the single millions, people like Collinsons at Stripe were raising in the 100 millions. And so it became very difficult to compete cross-functionally, if you like, just as a pure payment provider. So we decided to focus on a couple of what I considered to be at the time digitally Neanderthal businesses. So areas, market sectors that were not that advanced with digital. One was debt collection, and the other was parking. So we formed a partnership with Flowbird, the world's biggest parking company, and still are, in fact, with the acquisition imminent by Easy Group, to develop parking. And we found a number of partners that I'm pleased to say we still have in debt collection. And we sort of succeeded to a point. And then about a year before COVID hit, we thought about the future of this market. And it seems self-evident that if people wanted to charge a car going into the future, they'd have to park it first. And so we developed a platform for EV. And we also saw it as, again, quite a nascent market, quite young, something that we could attack and perhaps own. And of course, also significantly contributing to the sustainability argument. So by actually switching out dirty cars for clean cars in parking spaces and enabling them to charge seemed like a jolly good business idea financially, and a jolly good one for my children and grandchildren. So that's how we got here.
And it's fantastic that to see how you've constantly iterated, which for me kind of goes to the caliber of the type of person you are, but also the businesses that you're creating, in the sense of you're innovating, you're pivoting, you're embracing change, you're even using change to your advantage. And one of the things that, Sarah's spoken about often is this idea of kind of reducing the amount of bits of margin that are all the way through the chain. And maybe by owning more of that, you begin to make it a better experience for, not just an experience that is good for you guys, but a better experience for the user, for the people that are parking, for the people that are charging. Would that be fair?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, firstly, innovation, unless you're a genius, and I'm not, but people like Steve Jobs, they created revolution by fundamentally seeing hardware about consumer and lifestyle. The story goes that the first thing he did was go out and buy a weather channel because he wanted to get eyeballs on a screen. He didn't want it in people's ears. But that's really revolutionary thinking. Most innovation, certainly the stuff that we pursue, is evolution. So you're right, little pivots, but little steps. And it's all about trying to anticipate the behavior of the public, because it doesn't matter whether you call your business B2B or B2C or B2B2C or B2C2B or whatever you want to call it. At the end of the day, there's only one person that pays, and it's us. It's us. So we have to get inside the head of the user. Obviously, if you're a B2B company like us, where we're selling to partners or servicing partners, we have to work with our partner to anticipate where the customer wants to go. And payments is incredibly complex. I'm not an apologist for the payment industry. I've only been in it 15 years. Financial services a lot longer, but payments specifically not that long. And it is awfully complex. It always strikes me that industries create black arts, acronyms and phrases and stuff. And I think it's mainly to confuse the lights out of the rest of it. And payments is no different. Lots of moving parts, lots of infrastructure behind the scene that makes it all work. Does anyone care but us? No. What our job is to create a really simple user experience. And the more invisible the payments, the better it is. Do you remember when Amazon said just charge to account, click? They transferred the thinking from paying to receiving a parcel. Psychologically, they changed it. I always think if you pay for something, you don't want to do it. If you buy something, you've paid with a positive intent. You pay a bill, don't you?
Mm-hmm.
We turn every experience, particularly paying for fuel and all of that infrastructure, that ecosystem around fuel, can we turn that from paying to buying? If we can do that behaviorally, if we can create that transition, and our job is to be the guys to do that and implement that. And I think it's a massive oncoming problem for the industry. We're already talking to a lot of CPOs that have grown, sometimes by acquisition, and that's often where you end up with multiple supply chains, multiple different contracts, and lots of complications in terms of offering a consistent experience across your brand. And payments is a key part of it. Apple Pay, Google Pay.
Yeah.
Think of that. Apple was the first to design probably the easiest, because it took out PIN codes and everything, didn't it? It just said, use your thumb, use your face. And sometimes it's so inobtrusive. It's dangerous. I mean, I buy vinyl by smiling at my phone now, which, much to my wife's chagrin, is becoming a regular occurrence. The postman even picked me off on Saturday for having too many square parcels that won't go through my letterbox. which is vital.
I think my face, Keith, my face has cost me a lot, but I don't know that it's paid for very much. But there we go.
Not yet, Paul. Not yet. Something I think always makes me laugh whenever I spend time with Keith is you say you're not a genius, but you are an incredible visionary, and that is proven by your sort of history, your work. But there's always a sort of common theme here, which is that I think you're very disruptive. I think that's why we get on as colleagues and friends, but also we're on a mission really to make sure that Paythru demystifies for our industry. And also, Paul, acronym police, you let Keith get away with CPO there, charge point operator. I'm watching.
Sorry, yeah.
Oh,
I know.
I did.
Oh, you certainly
Well
did.
done.
So let's keep up on a level. But because we are that sort of invisible partner, it's very much our mission to be the best invisible partner that there is available to what we call the EV vertical. So that could be anything from sort of the energy that the vehicles are consuming right through to where that energy comes from. It's all processing kilowatt hours and the right people being paid. And that's really all people would need to know and understand about us. But I was so pleased that Keith and the team agreed to be part of the EV Cafe ecosystem because, of course, we're about demystifying and accelerating, not really about being evangelical anymore. It's about driving change as quickly as possible and getting the right people in the room to do that. And Keith, I haven't put this on the questions, but I wanted to know, it's 6 months in now to the EV Cafe partnership, and you as a visionary and a disruptor have some great ideas how we as an industry can grow faster. What are you seeing coming down our road in the next 3 to 5 years, do you think? What's going to go across our paths as EV as we know it today? In your payments brain, of course.
We will see an increasing but slow, I think, adoption of alternative non-card payment methods. So I don't think we'll see crypto. I think that's probably 10 years away from being a mainstream currency, partly because it's being severely legislated against in some countries. But I think we will see things like bank payments. So we're already seeing more and more of that. To give the payments industry credit, because I may have sounded like I was being derogatory earlier, which I'm not, but it does a very good job. And one of the things it has done extremely well is to give merchants the assurance they're getting paid. So all of that stuff with PIN and all of those things mean that in a nanosecond, the merchant can deliver his product, and hopefully the consumer can receive that product. Online banking is a long way from that, but I think we will see it come in as we see reward cards and maybe more post-payment methods, not RFID necessarily, but subscriptions. I think they will come back in. I think the OEMs will go down that route. So I think we'll see that sort of thing, and certainly what's called the Payment Services Directive 3 is very much addressing the integration of online banking. So I think we'll see some of that. I think the challenge that we face, EV Cafe is a very good example because I was obviously with you guys a couple of weeks ago. We're at the early adoption phase still in the market. And if you look at other markets, it's how do you get to that mass market? What's the big step that the industry has to take? Payments will not necessarily be a part of that. We're a secondary beneficiary. You have to have the vehicles, you have to have the infrastructure. That's the chicken and egg. And it still is a little bit. I mean, I saw an article, EU pretty much saying the same thing, that infrastructure is not keeping pace with car adoption and the car adoption's flattening out. Well, because we're essentially at the end of the early adoption curve. From our perspective, therefore, I think with EV Cafe, it's about getting behind and supporting those businesses that will overcome the perceptions that people have about adopting an electric vehicle. And I think that's the role the EV Cafe can play, because it has a very wide remit, but it does cover practically every base that I can see from a motoring and consumer perspective. So I think it's getting behind the key battles that we need to fight. And then I think we'll come into our own, because not only will we create good payment experiences, but we'll also start to rebuild some of the ecosystem that people are used to consuming around fueling, like retail, like facilities, and we'll also help tackle that most stubborn of emissions, which is the LCV, the light commercial vehicle and HGV sector, where those facilities are even more important to how that guy goes about or that person goes about their daily work. So to me, it's about getting behind how we can change the perception to grow the adoption of electric vehicles faster. And in the meantime, behind it, we're trying to anticipate what the consumer will want and how he want to pay and what he'll want to pay with. What's going to be in the basket and how can we help do it? A great simple example is parking. You know, a lot of our clients tell us that some of the, other than the usual stuff, pre-authorization is a big subject, and we're dealing with that, and we'll have a product in market this quarter to deal with that. But also things like, do I pay for parking if I'm charging? Not always clear to people. And in one particular client case, that's the biggest cause of complaints to the local council that owns many of the sites that our client operates on. So it's giving people the option to understand how they want to consume the product and to try and make it as simple as possible.
Yeah, that's really well said. And even those of us who, because I see it slightly differently in the industry, we've had the sort of pioneers. That was us lot putting in chargers back in 2010, like I was, and Paul driving electric vans before I even saw one. And then you get the sort of early adopters, which is that percentage of the market we're seeing now driving around. And then I think, to coin Aid Thomas's observation, Aid Thomas runs EV Summit, which we'll be attending in July as a headline sponsor with Visa as partners. He said we're entering into that sort of early acceptance phase now. So people accepting that this is coming. And what I see Paythru as being so influential in doing is spotting what's coming down the tracks and translating that to get us ready for when it hits, right? So with your knowledge and my sort of EV experience, we can certainly do that. But I wanted to tell you about this article I saw released by Visa, where they spoke to Gen A, which is Generation Alpha, so the kids of today. And what do they want from their payment experience? How do they want to pay for things? And it was adorable. It was like, I want to open the car with my hand. I want to start the car with my face. You know, they don't want anything. They even use the word in the article about being frictionless, just nothing. Nothing to stop them in their tracks. Are you able to tell us a bit about the white paper that we are doing, Keith, about trying to find this magical frictionless experience for EV payments?
Yeah, I mean, we've put that into market, and the EV Cafe folk are helping us amongst others. So thank you for that. But yeah, we're trying to get behind the payment experience. Exactly what Sarah just said. What do people actually want? It's interesting when you look at that Gen A, for example, and other things that people want. The payments industry is actually already deploying AI and a lot of very sophisticated tools to enable some of those things. Biometric. So biometric, eye, face, thumb, whatever, something. Payments is an interesting thing when you break it down. There's only four things that payments are about. If you strip it all back, are you who you say you are? Have you got the money? That's it. And even more acute with EV. I don't want to give you a £60 charge unless I can validate those two things. In it, the are you who you say you are, the payment world is basically about a piece of knowledge that only you have and an independent verification of that knowledge. So when you look at biometric processes, they do both. Because what we're looking at is something that's unique to the individual. That already exists in Apple Pay, Google Pay. That's what we're using. That Sarah and I had a conversation last Thursday about this, actually, didn't we, Sarah? When we were looking at this putative landscape in which somebody rocks up at a charge point, plugs in and walks away. So when you get there, you already know who you are. So if you're in a multiple vehicle, could be, you share the vehicle with your wife or kids, or you're a van, and that they're often shared too. Like taxis. Mm-hmm. One guy has it for the weekend, one guy has it in the week. It already knows who you are. Well, that's available now. When you go to the charge point, it knows where you are. But more importantly, it's not whether the charge point knows where you are, it's whether the cloud knows where you are with that charge point. That's already here. Mm. And then there's a sign-off. So that's about 15118 or whatever. There's a piece of tech that works there. The telematics in the car will tell you the state of your car. If you've already plugged in your destination, it knows where you're going, it knows the road conditions, it knows your progress to that. If you're a driver, it has a manifest data, and it can figure out where you are on that manifest, when you've got to stop, what you've got to do. So there is already technology out there that can compute what you'll need for your next stop, for example, if you're a delivery driver, or to my final destination. And it might even suggest where I can get the food I like, because it happens to know it's a weekday and I've got the kids in the car and they choose which food I eat, because that's what kids do.
Why are your kids choosing your food? All I could think about was Greg's then. Do you know, I once
They
got a parking
always-
ticket. I once got a parking ticket going into Greg's because I thought I'll just put my car on charge, and I didn't realise I had to pay for parking and pay for charging. So that was the most expensive sausage roll I think I've ever bought.
For children in the back, in motorway service stations, you never get to choose where you stay.
No.
That is too true. That is too true.
So back to the survey, what we're trying to do is there's lots of technology, but you know, one of the things in our industry, they say sometimes that it's the solution looking for a problem. Okay, what we're trying to do is take all this wonderful technology, and we're trying to map it back to people's expectations and what they're expecting, what they want, and what's going to make the difference. Don't give them something that doesn't enable them to jump the next hurdle. You know, the whole EV thing for 2035 or whatever, it's a hurdle race. You know, and we're trying to figure out which hurdles that we get the customers over first to get us to this mass adoption state, the next stage. So that's what the survey is about. It's about giving us insight into how we can develop our product with our clients to make that difference.
It's so important, isn't it? Lots of people come up to us at the EV Cafe and say, "Oh, we've got this great new idea, and it's this, and it's that, and it does this, and it does that." My first question, Keith, in 9 times out of 10 conversations is, what problem is it solving? Because that is the true entrepreneur, right? They find a problem and they go ahead and solve it. And that's what's been both exciting and frustrating about many of the startups that have come into our sector, in particularly in the commercial vehicle world, right? Which is really important. Arrival came, they were solving the problem of a ground up electric van. The Volta truck, they were solving the problem of ingress and egress from the truck itself, getting in and out of the vehicle, and also the direct vision problem, and also the air quality around those vehicles. They were genuinely entrepreneurial, but they failed for whatever reason. Volta coming back, which is great news. How did you get to be that problem solving person? So, I mean, you know, go back through, because you know you started with that marketing bit, that, you know, carpeting, I think was the phrase you used. The Victoria line with leaflets that were touting your wares. What was the engine room of Keith as you were growing up? What, you know, how did you become this person that is able to problem solve, that is passionate, that's driven, that's focused on delivering a result?
So one of the reasons businesses fail, and by the way, most do, you know, that's the unfortunate statistic, that most do, is business case. And it's quite straightforward, really. To your point, Paul, you might have a great idea, but if nobody's going to adopt it, you won't make any money. So that's pretty much why. And sometimes ideas are ahead. I mean, I hate to say it, but I felt Paythru was a little ahead of the curve rather, back in whatever it was, 2000 and whatever it was, we set it up 2007. We built a payment gateway, and actually nobody was ready for it. Even the legislation at the time said that on a mobile phone you had to contemporaneously consume, which basically meant you could only sell football logos, where you charged it back to the account. So you can have a great vision, but sometimes, in fact, always, I'd say, take however long you think it's going to take, double it, and when you're happy with that, double it again. That's the first thing. So finding the right funding is key. Also, having a huge amount of belief in what you're doing and seeing it through. and not being afraid, as you said earlier, to pivot, to slightly change when you need to change. That's not a failure. It's not a weakness. It's a strength, because we're dealing with people and they change. How many opinions have changed in the last 15 years? 15 years ago, we were pro-European. Now what's happened? If you don't adapt to those changes, then you are almost certainly going to fail. So it's not a rigidity about your idea being the best thing. It's about how to get it into market. I'm fortunate in that I've changed many things in my career. I started as a lawyer, became a marketing guy, then went into business systems, and then went to run a business, and then ended up setting up my own. So I have got a very rounded view of business, and I think that helps in the sense that sometimes, people, founders or ideas people, can be a little bit blind to other people, the other noise in the room, like your finance guy going, great, but we're going to run out of money by Christmas. Where's the adoption? Where's the revenue? And of course, you do need that belief, because it doesn't come overnight. Very rarely is it an overnight. There are overnight successes. It's being adaptive. And it's always being focused. I'm a massive lover of behavioural economics, probably up there with cricket and Fulham, and music is my favourite thing. And what behavioural economics was born from was the simple understanding that most economical models are broken in the sense that economics relies ostensibly on a perfect market, a perfect buyer and a perfect seller and a perfect market, and it balances off. It's a very simplistic view. But when Kahneman and Tversky and others came along, they realized that the idea was great, but it's completely contaminated by us, because we don't do what we're supposed to do. We get very influenced by herding instincts and biases and other people, even more so in the world that you invade, which you've already noticed I don't, social media.
Invade. I love it. Keith, I don't think we're ever going to have a guest on the show that cites behavioural economics, cricket and Fulham as their three favourite things. But actually, I wanted to go there. I wanted to talk to you about your belief, because it isn't just the belief that you have in your business plan. It's the belief that you have in your team, the people around you, the ecosystem with which you sit within. But going back to that sporting effort, I'm absolutely privileged, and I really mean that, to have spent quite a bit of time with you. Not enough time. Sometimes the cricket gets cancelled. I think it's a myth that cricket even exists. I think it's just a chance to get together. But every time we've tried to watch cricket, it has failed. But I've often come away from those days thinking to myself, I get it. I get your managerial style. I get your passion and how you deliver your vision for Paythru as a business. And a lot of that stems from sport. I do quite extreme sport, and that gives me that sort of endless energy. You're very tactical and strategic in the way that you approach business. Talk to me about Fulham, 55 years, 55 years of supporting the wonderful game. Where do you see the crossovers in your love of sport and your success in business?
I'm not sure love of football, for example, necessarily goes hand in glove in a sentence with Fulham Football Club, because most people wouldn't see them as successful. But it has taught me a lot. One thing is, it's the only thing that's been totally consistent in my life. They've been totally consistently rubbish. No, they haven't. That's not fair. When I talk about consistency, one thing that goes, it's like a golden thread through my life, and I can relate all of the events of my life around going to Fulham, home and away. And the other thing about supporting Fulham is it teaches you humility. It teaches you to enjoy the game for what it is, and it teaches you how to lose, sometimes too often. And it also taught me a lot about survival. We had a thing in the late 90s called Fulham 2000, when Royal Bank of Scotland were threatening to foreclose on the ground. And I was one of a small group of people that tried to raise the money to salvage the club. And it was very much a community effort. It's amazing. There's a strange thing about football, particularly if you're a Fulham supporter, which is you sort of have a level of trust in strangers, which is quite low. And then you bump into somebody you've never met, and you find out they're a Fulham supporter, and the trust rockets, right? Because you have this sort of community of interest. It's a very strange thing. But look, football is a distraction. It's one of the few places I can go. Cricket the same. which totally takes me out of thinking about work and all of the other things. And you have to do that. It's called habituation. You get stuck into the same ways of thinking, and you get stuck into your same four walls, and you have to habituate. You have to take yourself into different areas to think more constructively or creatively. I even learned today that walking upstairs as opposed to getting into the lift apparently gives the brain some sensory positivity, which is quite bizarre. But I think it's the same thing. It's dishabituation. If you get the stairs rather than get the lift, you're changing the way your brain is addressing your life and your thought processes. So that's what Fulham and cricket have in common. I'm not a great lover of football. I love cricket as a game. I just love Fulham Football Club for reasons that are probably quite bizarre, and I haven't really rationalised myself, if I'm honest. But Sarah, interestingly, I do have a really good mix of people in the business that are very different. As I said to Sarah last week, I'm the sort of person that would love to see a painting of a waterfall. Sarah's the sort of person that jumps in. Not into the painting, I hasten to add. That would be distracting.
No, she's a literal into the waterfall person, isn't she? Absolutely.
I did the Duns River Falls. I told her, and that never again. So that's
Very
it
funny.
for me. Waterfalls, tick. I'll just go and see them in the gallery. But you do need all those different skills, and that's also motivating to me as well, to talk to people with different takes on life and business.
It's fascinating. I've actually been to Duns River Falls myself as well.
Have you? I live to tell the tale.
Yeah, no, I live to tell the tale. Yeah, no, it's. I mean, but I'm sort of more with Sarah on this. I'm afraid I'm more the type of person that will. Well, so we have our annual New Year's Day mission is to go swimming. Usually at Bournemouth, but any beach will do. In the sea on New Year's Day, it's that mindset piece, isn't it? And I sort of line up those things, but I'm interested, Keith, because it's clear that you place people very central to your personal mission, but your business. That's how it feels. The connection within community, the behavioural economics. Even that customer journey that we began with. With people arriving at a parking space or a charging point or other. What is it that got you into people? Because not everybody cares.
I have to say, I'm not a people person. If the impression has come across that I'm a people person,
but it seems like you care, though. You care about people. That's how it seems.
I'm massively interested in understanding how people work. Massively interested in. If point of fact, both my daughters are doing psychology at university as well. That was not an encouragement of any sort. Just happens to be. I think, but for me, that's a business thing, because understanding how people react, how people perceive, how you frame statements and issues is key to success. If we go back to what we talked about earlier, we will get some data, right? The difference between data and insight is understanding how you can apply data and understanding the psychology of people and how they behave in your universe. It's, and people behave very differently in different universes is key to doing it. So that's just a subject that fascinates me. People on the whole don't. Individually, they don't particularly interest me. But then again, no, it's true. It's true. But then again, we are herders. We're herding animals, and so understanding the instincts of us as animals is very interesting. Understanding individuals is quite a challenge, I think.
Oh gosh, yeah, absolutely. People, yeah, but I guess
it's like watching people.
I'm curious.
People say people watching, right? It's a vicarious thrill.
Yeah.
You think, why do we do that? Because we've all innately want to try and understand more. why people do things.
Yeah.
How often do you use phrases like, what on earth is he doing? What is she thinking? You know, that's my motivation.
Absolutely.
There's my motivation. I'm trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
Painting
I'm
the fourth bridge job, that one. Never get done, but it's fascinating trying to find out.
And as you were growing up, you know, and I mean, obviously you've qualified as a lawyer, and I think there's a lot of psychology linked with law, particularly, um, even the mindset of how we create laws and they're created for fairness and stuff. What was driving you as you were growing up, as you chose law, you know, and as you moved into career, you know, at that point in your life, what was driving you forward?
Well, I left school at 16, so I didn't go to uni. But
Mm,
I think it's like most people, you meet mentors along the way, people that influence you. And I met a guy at Lloyd's. I knew insurance wasn't necessarily a career path, but then I didn't know what was. But I think that's common with
mm,
most people at 16 to 18, you sort of fall into things. Some people decide at 11 they want to be a rocket scientist, but I wasn't one of those. Um, so I
mm.
just wanted to earn money and drive a car. And so went to work. A guy called Bob Hallam sort of took me aside and said, "You're, you should carry on your studies while you can. Really difficult when you get older, but on." Um, and so he encouraged me actually not to do insurance and made an exception for me at Lloyd's for them to actually support me with a bit of day release or half a day release and financial encouragement. And I did company secretariat. And that was because company secretary is a very broad church. It's accounting and law
Mm.
and HR, believe it or not, and other things. And so it meant, well, his sort of story to me was it was a launching pad. You can do a multiplicity of things from there if you want to pursue a business career. The thing that fascinated me was law. I was toying with the idea of becoming a barrister. Uh, my mother always thought I could sell sand to the Arabs, so it was like go and do something and vocalize. And I was always quite good at English, so there we go. I went into the law, and it was actually again another guy, Tony Deere, who was the head of the company I was working for at the time, that said I tended to be a little vocal at sales and marketing meetings when I was essentially there to take the minutes and advise when asked. And he gave me the chance to vocalize in the marketing department. So um, I jumped at it. It was a big career change at 23 or whatever, but I jumped at it. Mike Fuller, the current chairman, a great supporter of Paythru, gave me my next opportunity to do something different when he recruited me to set up a wholly new department to transform a sleepy life company out in Aylesbury called Target Life. So I went in to do business systems. I had no idea what that was. Thought it was O&M. Went and got a book out of the library and read it up about it. And we did.
O
We
and
chose
M, right?
organisation and
I
method.
could.
Organisation and methods. It was sort of. It's a principle that you don't computerize rubbish because you get computerized rubbish. So you sort everything out. GIGO, it's called garbage in, garbage out. So the idea is you go and sort the processes out manually, then you computerize them, which is still a valuable lesson, by the way.
Yeah.
And we did. That business was bought for 30 million by the late Jacob Rothschild, just passed away, and was sold for 230 million 3 years later. So we did
Wow.
transform it. And then I went to work for Sir David Jones at Next, running financial services in a retailer, which was interesting. My big outtake from that was, Keith, today it's tactics, tomorrow's strategy. And when I woke up the next morning, it was, Keith, today's tactics, tomorrow's strategy. But and that was my first big thing with data, because it was all about using data. And that sort of started my compulsion with data and behavior, because there were very sophisticated models that determine not just people's credit score and what you could send them through the post that they were likely to pay for, but also started to get into how people behave and respond to different triggers, different offers, different statements, different framing. And so did that with another long-term supporter of Paythru is still a board member, Arnie Iverson, and then went out on my own in the 90s. So
what a journey!
Yeah, it's been fun.
What a journey!
It's been fun.
And I love the fact, because it sort of validates me. I don't have a qualification. I mean, I'm not saying you don't have qualifications, but your journey hasn't been you're typical of an MD or an entrepreneur in terms of like degrees or this. Although from my experience, many of the people that we speak to are not like overly qualified in a sort of a degree kind of sense, but really have. I think for me, the common denominator, and Saz, maybe you can comment on this as well, has been that the people value the people that they've met on that journey, who have mentored, encouraged, helped change direction, invested in, backed, supported, whatever it is. It's about one person supporting another person. I can look back at my own career and kind of recite it through that. What about you, Saz?
Yeah, I was going to echo the same sentiment. Thank you, Paul, for introducing it like that. I mean, one of the things I've noticed is about being grateful for what you've got. You know, I know Keith has a huge appreciation for art and culture and just learning in general. I'll be sending stupid memes of a weekend via the WhatsApp chat, and I'll get a piece from the Financial Times in response sometimes, and something equally hilarious the next time. So yeah, Keith's ability to absorb information and sort of sift through it, and that rubbish in, rubbish out, or garbage in, garbage out, as you called it, is so true. And that's something we're trying to achieve here at Paythru, is just to sift through on behalf of the industry. Let's not allow the industry to be bamboozled anymore. Let's lift the lid on the ecosystem that sits behind the charge point and see if we can improve it for the person that matters the most, which is the driver, you know, the person at the center of everybody's business case. So when people say payments aren't interesting and payments don't matter and join the queue, I think it really should be the other way around, which is definitely one of the reasons I onboarded at Paythru. And Keith, if I may, I know we're drawing to the close of our recording time now, but it was definitely upon meeting you that second time, that second interview, whatever it was, next to the canal in Paddington, which sounds horrendous, but just for the viewer's pleasure, it was a nice coffee and a cake. It wasn't just a grotty old canal in Paddington.
That's made of Vale, by the way. Yeah, it's made of Vale.
But I realised that this is a man who knows how to transform an industry. This is somebody who knows to get the good people around one another. And that if you ever had the opportunity to join us, you'll see that there's no time to waste. None of us want to waste any time. It's about efficiency and gains and strategic vision and executing that with a plan, being held to account, and making sure that we're doing everything we can to get there as fast as possible, effectively, of course.
I think that's right. I mean, I did something at the weekend. I'll give you an illustration of some industries that suffer from payment pain points, right? But do you know, to the point, I think sometimes, you know, when we say it's about the driver and payments, and people think, yeah, but I don't really get it. But I'll give you an example that I think everyone can relate to, that happened to me at the weekend, which is one of the biggest payment pain points in the world. Right. And if you've ever wondered how online shopping came about or other technologies entered shopping, you've only got to queue at a till in Tesco or your favourite shopping experience to realise you spend 20 minutes or so packing everything into a cart. You then spend 5 minutes unpacking it and 5 minutes repacking it. Why? Is it because you like packing? Or even unpacking, I doubt it, is to pay. Okay? And I think that's sort of analogous in my mind to where the EV market is, right? We're unpacking and repacking. There's too much going on for a simple process. If you went to Amazon, you blink and you've bought it. That's where we need to be. And when we start making that experience match the infrastructure that people perceive they can go about their daily lives, whether they drive for a living or whether the driver is you or me, because they're the same person. You know, every guy that drives the van that delivers my parcel on my vinyl is also the guy that drives his family at the weekend. We've got to put them front and center. And I think, you know, the supermarket experience just reminded me of how poor an experience can be. We still suffer it. But that's why so much has gone online, because you know, Shop at Ocado, all of those guys they essentially saw a better way to pay, right? You don't have to do that anymore. You just got to put it in your fridge.
Yeah.
A great payment experience enables that transition, market
But
transition.
I think that's it, isn't it, Keith? I mean, you talk about a great payment experience, but we touched on it right at the beginning, how we move from paying to buying, or that we sort of move on beyond actually parting with any money. We what we're not doing is parting with money. What we are doing is receiving something that we want. And the money is almost incidental. The payment is almost incidental to that process. I mean, I don't tell very many people this, but I did actually one time in my life sell cars. I know. Sorry, everybody.
What?
I am really sorry. I know. Tell me about it. It's like, anyway, but when I sold cars, one of the most effective, let's call it a close, right? Because that's what we were in the business to do. We would close a sale was go, right, what colour do you want? And actually, it wasn't then about how much am I paying for the car, it's what colour do I want it in. And we moved from buying or paying or cost and all that sort of stuff. And it was just about, what's my experience that I'm going to get? What's going to give me visual pleasure and all of those other things as part of that process? Because I'm not really that sort of hard-nosed salesman that did the whole close kind of thing, you know. But for me, it wanted to be a soft experience, an experience that was pleasurable and people were with you along. And that seems to be where this whole conversation has been going. Would you
Confirmation
agree?
bias. Yeah, that's confirmation bias. If you talk to people and you say, what's the favourite color? They go silver. I have one in silver. It's only a couple of £100 more than that, and you're suddenly confirming their desire. And yeah, that's what it is. It's all about. It's always about the consumer. In our case, the driver, which is why we've sort of commissioned this work. And it's about anticipating needs, and it's about if you're going down the wrong path, just like if you're in a car, you change route. And, we have got some really exciting stuff coming through in the next 12 months, and we will be redesigning a lot of the experiences that people currently have for this market. There's no question, like any nascent market, sometimes the solutions are bolted on. They're not built in, they're built on. Well, we're going to make them built in. That's our goal. We're going to Uberize the experience. We're going to put the customer at the center, the driver at the center, and build the solutions around them and what they are expecting from that fueling. And as you know, a lot of destination charging has downtime. And we've thought a lot with our partners at Bright Green about how we can put unattended retail into those environments and facilities like toilets to make that a not considered to be a waste of 20 minutes.
Yeah.
It's just part of your plan.
Yeah, exactly. And Keith, I started out this conversation wondering how anybody could make payments interesting. But now I found out. Because and also realizing the importance of this whole process. Now, Sarah's gone on about it, pretty eloquently, but I love the way that you as an individual have brought it to. And Sarah, you've said this. I'm not dismissing anything you said. I did listen, honestly, I promise. But that simplicity, the simplicity with the person at the center of it, and that whole understanding of behavioral economics. I mean, I've been introduced to so many new and really interesting ideas today, and I love how you've been on this journey through thick and thin with your wonderful Fulham Football Club, which I love it how they're your distraction. They're your, oh gosh, I don't have to think anymore. It's been a fascinating journey. It's been a fascinating journey today, and I'm really glad that Bob Hallam did what he did with you back those days, and then Tony went on to give you that incredible opportunity for you to move forward, and how intrinsic people have been to this journey, and also how intrinsic people will be going forward, with the customer at the heart. And I look forward to the day where I can just walk up to a charge point knowing that Paythru have got my back and I can just walk up and paying is not an issue. But paying is always the issue at the moment. You walk towards the charge point with a bit of fear and trepidation as you present your card or your app or your vehicle and think, how do I do this? I want that all to go away. I do. For the drivers of the future, for the van drivers of the future, for the commercial drivers in all their forms, but also the car drivers. Keith, this has been fascinating. Thank you so much for sharing your night. And what's even better is we get to join you on this journey as the EV Cafe, and we get to hear it all firsthand, one through Sarah, but two through you as an organisation as we continue to support you with this change. So please do keep us informed of all of the new things that are going to be coming, and we look forward to the output of the. I need to read is the white paper out or is it coming out?
First of all, you need to fill out the survey, Paul. That would be very
That's
helpful.
it. Yeah, I've got the survey. Yeah.
Publication we're planning just before the summit, aren't we, Sarah?
Yeah, we're going to reveal the results on the panel session live with Visa at the EV Summit on the 15th of July.
Fantastic. So there is, and I've seen the survey on LinkedIn. I haven't filled it out yet, but I will, I promise. And we'll put a link to that survey in this podcast, Saz. Yeah?
Thank you. That'd be great.
So that as many people as possible can fill it out, and encourage everybody to do so. Listen, if we don't play our part, how can we ever hope to inform the people providing the services to give us what we need and what we want? Be great if we could pay with face and hand and all of those kinds of things. Fabulous. But Keith, once again, thank you very much. There will be a link to everything in the description for the podcast. I'm excited to hear people's responses to this. It's been a really insightful session. And head over to the evcafe.org to listen to more wonderful podcasts with great people, innovators and entrepreneurs just like Keith. Thanks ever so much for listening. Sarah, Keith, thank you and goodbye. And here's to the next one.
Thank you, Mr. Kirby. Thank you, Mr. Brown.